Matt Lauer was the most trusted morning anchor in the U.S. He made $25 million a year on NBC's Today Show. But there was a sinister truth behind the scenes that would ruin everything. One complaint in November 2017 changed his life forever. He was sacked and banned from NBC within 24 hours. Then there were the stunning facts. There was a secret button under his desk, several victims, and accusations that went back decades. The man who woke up millions of Americans would never work again. We're going to tell you the truth about what happened and how he's doing now. Matt Lauer was born in New York City on December 30, 1957. His past was anything from normal. His dad, J. Robert Lauer, was an executive at a bike manufacturer and hailed from a Jewish family in Romania. Marilyn Comer, his mother, had been a model and owned her own store. Matt grew up in two completely different worlds. One was formed by the values and work ethic of immigrants. The other was all about how you look, how you dress, and how you act in public. These early influences stuck with him. They helped him become flexible, polished, and aware of how other people see you. These are important qualities for someone who would eventually talk to millions of people on live TV. Matt wasn't the first person in his family to become famous. Art Gentry, his grandfather, was a professional singer. He wasn't famous, but he played music during the golden age of music, and young Matt was often there to watch. Seeing his grandfather run a stage made a big influence on him. It wasn't simply for fun. It was about how to talk to people. Took it all in. He learned how to act, how to keep calm, and how to talk in a way that made others pay attention. These lessons happened long before he took any journalism training, and they would eventually shape the way he spoke on the air. Matt started going to Ohio University in the late 1970s. He was going to graduate with a degree in communications. But in 1979, when he was only 21, he did something brave. He quit school with only 4 credits left to get his degree. He didn't wait for a diploma. He wanted to do things for genuine. And he did. He worked as a news producer at WOWK TV in Huntington, West Virginia, for his first employment. It wasn't pretty, but it was the beginning. Matt wasn't only working for the money. He was a diligent worker, learned quickly, and was helpful. He was reporting on camera within a year and had even gotten his own talk show part. That early promotion to on-air reporter in 1980, when he was only 22, highlighted how quickly he was moving. It seemed strange for someone so young, especially because he didn't have a degree, but Matt wasn't like most people. He dove right in and took care of both the 6 p.m. and 11 p.m. and 11 p.m. news shows in a medium-sized market. These were not fluff bits. It was live news on the spot. Even though he was a newbie, Matt's serene presence began to turn heads. He didn't just want to work in TV, he wanted to be the best at it. Matt co-hosted PM Magazine in 3 different cities from 1980 to 1986. Richmond came first, then Providence, and lastly New York City. It wasn't common for a host to move markets like that, and they always did well. PM Magazine was a fast-paced blend of local news, celebrity news, and lifestyle articles. It wasn't easy to do, especially since each location has its own tone. But Matt did. He changed his approach, learned what each audience needed, and got better with each step. His time on the New York version of the show got him noticed in the greatest media market in the country. It was a big stride forward. Matt received his first true chance to be on national television in 1986. ABC started a new show called Fame, Fortune, and Romance, which is based on lifestyles of the rich and famous. He co-hosted it with Robin Leach, who was known for his dramatic voice in tours of famous people's homes. The show was showy and over the top, showcasing off the lives of billionaires, private aircraft, and yachts. It didn't last long, less than a year. But it got Matt in front of people all around the country. He was no longer only a name in his area. He was beginning to break through. By the end of the 1980s, Matt was doing something that very few people could do. He was working in more than one city at the same time. He worked for ESPN and HBO while simultaneously anchoring local shows in Philadelphia and Boston from 1987 to 1989. He would cover sporting events like the Stanley Cup Finals for ESPN and entertainment news for HBO. It meant working long hours, traveling all the time, and getting very little sleep. People who work in the field saw it. He was all over the place. Some people even joked that he lived at the airport, but his hard work paid off. He became known as someone who could do news, sports, and entertainment and do them all well. Matt Lauer's position at 9 Broadcast Plaza from 1989 to 1991 was more than simply a regular local news job. The show aired live on WER TV in New York for 3 hours every day, and things got weird quite quickly. Producers started to bring in more outrageous and provocative guests in an attempt to ride the wave of shock TV culture in the early 1990s. Lauer didn't like where it was going. He often fought with the producers and even turned out reading live advertising for a Dial-O-Matrice sponsor. It was unusual for someone who was still trying to make a name for themselves. His stint there came to an end suddenly, and once he left, people like Howard Stern and Weird Al Yankovic briefly took over as hosts. The same show then became The Richard Bey Show, which is known for things like lie detector tests and Miss Big Butt contests. It went wrong, but Lauer had already left. He was practically out of money by 1992. He didn't have a steady job on TV and was about to bounce a rent check. Then WNBC TV gave him a chance to live. He was hired to be Jane Hanson's co-anchor on Today in New York. The show was on in the early morning, but it was enough to get him up on his feet. He was promoted to co-anchor Live at 5, one of the station's best evening shows, just a year later. For a while, he worked on both shows. Sometimes, they would be on 3 different NBC shows in one day. The grueling hours were worth it. People started to think of him as slick, reliable, and unexpectedly warm for a newsman. His energy was quite strong. He made formal formats more personal and got to know NBC execs. In the early years of WNBC, he became well known across the country. From 1992 until 1997, Lauer was the go-to guy for NBC. When Tom Brokaw was away, he stood in for him on Weekend Today, NBC News at Sunrise, and even NBC Nightly News. His timetable was really hard. He would do the weather at daybreak, the news at noon, and the main news at night. It didn't matter. He continued coming and doing it beautifully. At NBC, his name became known for being dependable. People saw that he could easily switch roles without any problems. He wasn't showy, yet he could do a lot of different things and was always the same. Those years helped build trust with the senior leaders. In January 1994, he became the full-time news anchor for the Today Show, which was a big change in his life. From then on, he rose quickly and steadily. Lauer was getting more and more famous, but there was one thing he hadn't done yet: get his college degree. He had not been to Ohio University in about 20 years. Simply 4 credits short. He ultimately went back in 1997, when he was 39 years old. The president of the institution asked him to not only finish his degree but also give the commencement speech. Lauer didn't go to regular classes. Instead, he produced a paper about how his work on TV related to what he had learned. That summer, he walked across the stage with the class of 1997, over 20 years after his friends. It wasn't just a sign for him, it was something that meant a lot to him. He later remarked that moment made him prouder than many of the things he had done in his career. In 1999, 2 years later, Ohio University's Alumni Association granted him the Medal of Merit for his work and for being an encouragement to other people who were late. Matt Lauer started working at NBC on June 13, 1994. Moment he officially became the news anchor for the Today Show. At the time, the show was having trouble keeping listeners since Good Morning America was winning them over. Lauer's presence was just what NBC needed to make a change. He wasn't as stiff as most network anchors. People felt like he belonged in their living room because he was so warm. He helped change the tide in 3 years. People started coming back to watch. He merged hard news with celebrity interviews in a way that was fresh and natural. NBC noticed right away. They had him fill in for famous people like Tom Brokaw and Bryant Gumbel. People didn't generally trust someone so new like that, but Lauer showed he could manage it. His Q rating had gone up a lot by the time he became co-anchor. He wasn't only well-liked. NBC could count on him to make money. Lauer got along well with his co-hosts in the beginning, but it wasn't always easy. When you worked with veterans like Bryant Gumbel, you had to learn how to share space on and off camera. People knew that Gumbel was bossy. He loved to open the show, run the main parts, and keep things under control. Lauer, who was 9 years younger, didn't contest it directly. Instead, he utilized his wit and charm to win them over. It was different with Katie Couric. They got along well right away. Later, Couric said she developed a crush on Lauer when he was a local news anchor. Their chemistry on film made mornings bright. They made fun of one another, joked around, and even finished each other's words. It seemed like flirting, but people loved it. The way they interacted with each other made the performance feel new. That bond made Today feel less like a news show and more like a morning routine. Lauer didn't just deal with the easy things. During big news events, his skills truly shone. Before he became co-anchor, he was already covering important national and international news stories. When it mattered most, NBC trusted him to report live events. The Oklahoma City bombing in April 1995 was one of his first big problems. It was a time when the show's typical light tone had to change. Lauer was a part of that change. He helped convey bad news by being calm. That moment offered people a feeling of steadiness in the middle of a tragedy. He also talked about the O.J. Simpson trial, trying to strike a balance between serious reporting and making it easy for morning audiences to understand. These things demonstrated that Lauer wasn't just there to chat. He was getting a reputation as someone you could trust when things were unclear. Lauer was made co-anchor on January 6, 1997. It was a major deal. He was taking over for Bryant Gumbel, who was a big name in the business. There was a lot of pressure. Everyone was watching that first week to see if he could manage it. He didn't just get through it, he thrived. That week, the ratings were the second highest in the show's history up to that moment. People reacted not only to the news, but also to how Lauer and Couric made them feel together. People at NBC called him the hunk next door. But it wasn't simply his appearance that mattered. He was smart, quick on his feet, and knew how to run an interview. He became the show's face throughout the next 20 years. He talked to presidents, famous people, and regular people who were in the middle of events that changed the globe. For a generation, his time on Today changed what morning TV would be like. Matt also took on more serious jobs at the same period. He became a contributing anchor for Dateline NBC in 1997. That job continued for 20 years and led him to become an investigative reporter. He didn't only write about funny things. He wrote on mysteries, cultural challenges, and long-form films. He hosted primetime specials and worked on important stories that aired at night as well as in the morning. Most morning anchors never get to that point. But Matt did it for 20 years. He took millions of people who watch primetime TV with him. It also helped him create a reputation as a journalist who could do both hard reporting and fun. That kind of dual presence made him look more flexible, more trustworthy, and more permanent than most other news people. During this period, his personal life also changed quickly. He went on a blind date with Dutch model Annette Roque in July 1997. They got married in Bridgehampton, New York, on October 3, 1998, just 5 months later. Both fans and tabloids were interested in the rapid marriage. Jade, whose real name was Annette, was only 22 years old and already doing well in Paris and New York. She had worked as a model for J. and Victoria's Secret. Crew and added her own touch of foreign style to the partnership. Later, Matt said that he didn't sense an instant connection on their first date. They didn't kiss for approximately 2 months. But when they did go forward, they did so quickly. Their marriage was a big deal in the news, especially because it brought together a well-known American TV star and a European fashion model. They would eventually have 3 kids together, but their relationship was in trouble behind the scenes. Jack Matthew, their first child, was born on June 26, 2001. Their daughter Romy was born in October 2003, and their youngest child, Tiz, was born in November 2006. It appeared like a great family on the outside. Matt said he loved the quiet times, family dinners, big events, and raising kids together. Those tiny things seemed to matter more than the spotlight, but the pressure from his career and the continual attention they received broke down the basis of their family life. They went to a lot of public events together, such their kids' horseback riding competitions and school graduations, but things weren't always as tranquil as they seemed. Annette filed for divorce in 2006, while she was pregnant with Tiz. The filing was a huge shock. Reports say that she told Matt he was mentally abusive, emotionally damaging, humiliating, and dominating. She said he was quite angry and hostile and even sought to make all the small decisions in their lives. It showed a picture that was very different from what people thought they saw on screen. The timing made everything much worse. They lived in the Hamptons and were expecting their third kid. They acted like a strong family. But the truth was falling apart. The divorce papers were a wake-up call. Not just for their close friends and family, but also for the general public, who thought they were a perfect couple. Everyone was shocked by what happened next. Annette dropped the divorce petition just a few weeks after filing. They chose to go to counseling and try to fix things. A lot of people assumed the breakup was going to happen, especially after such serious accusations. But it looked like Matt and Annette both thought their kids deserved another opportunity at family life. For the next 10 years, they were together in public. They kept going to events together and attempted to make their kids feel like everything was normal. But there was a lot of emotional work going on behind the scenes. Friends later remarked that even though they appeared like a couple, they didn't always live together. The reconciliation benefited Matt's public image, but it didn't fix the difficulties that led to the divorce in the first place. The scandal that ended Matt Lauer's career started quietly during the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia. He was one of the most trusted people on American TV at the time, and he made $20 million a year as the main anchor of NBC's Today Show. But something horrible was going on behind the scenes. Later, a young NBC worker told the network that Lauer had raped her in his hotel room during the Olympics. She stated it wasn't a mistake, it was rape, and the facts were upsetting. Her name was Brooke Nevels, and Ronan Farrow's 2019 book, Catch and Kill, was the first time anyone knew about her story. That moment in Sochi would quietly set off a chain reaction that would terminate Lauer's career. When NBC got the complaint, they started looking into it right away. NBC fired Lauer on November 29, 2017, less than a day after getting the report. Everyone was amazed by how fast it was. Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, his co-hosts, found out just a few minutes before they had to say it live on the air. They appeared shocked and upset as they told millions of people the news. Lauer left the show after 20 years, and it just took a few hours. But what happened next was even worse. At least 3 other women came out with their own allegations of harassment within 24 hours. Their stories weren't the only ones. They had been acting in the same way for years, and it was evident. A few ladies said they had attempted to tell someone about him earlier, but no one listened. A lot of people were too scared to say anything since Lauer had so much authority at the network. As more and more tales came out, it became clear that this wasn't just about one man. It was about a work environment that allowed this to happen. Then came the most upsetting details. After talking to a lot of current and former NBC personnel, Variety released an article. They said that Lauer had a secret button under his desk that he could use to lock the door to his office from the inside. NBC maintained it was just a normal security measure, but a number of women complained he used it to trap them. It was stated that he handed female workers sex devices as gifts, showed his private parts to co-workers and asked women about their sex histories. He made fun of or punished them if they didn't do what he wanted. These weren't just stories. These were stories from people who had worked with him for a long time. It was evident that this was a toxic place where the abuse had been permitted to go on. One of the most horrific reports was from 2001. Lauer called a former producer of the Today Show to his office during the day. He pushed the hidden button and shut the door behind her after she came in. He urged her to take off her blouse. After that, he hit her. She said she lost consciousness during the incident and woke up on the floor with her pants undone. Lauer's aide had to take her to see a nurse. She didn't tell anyone because she was concerned it would hurt her job. Lauer was invincible back then. People wouldn't have believed her. That quiet gave him the strength to keep going. When NBC let him go in November 2017, they made it apparent that he was done. Around 6:30 in the morning, just before the live broadcast, the network's chairman sent a memo to all employees. The note indicated that Lauer had broken NBC's rules and that they thought it wasn't the only time it had happened. They also wouldn't pay him the balance of his contract. Lauer had a $20 million a year deal, but NBC cut him off right away. And didn't provide him any severance pay. They dismissed him with cause, which means they thought the bad behavior was bad enough to end the contract. That choice made it clear that they didn't want to see him again. The investigation by Variety had been in the works for months. The timing was perfect. They disclosed their full results on the same day that Lauer was let go. They said that the harassment happened in a consistent way. Lauer gave sex toys with graphic notes, showed himself, and made improper comments all the time. Workers claimed that the mood was tense. A lot of people knew what was going on but didn't feel like they could say anything. The report made it obvious that the complaint NBC got wasn't new. They finally did something about the first one. It was even more stunning to hear that NBC management had known about Lauer's behavior for years. Some employees complained that their objections had been ignored. One former employee claimed straight out that management had shielded him because he was too valuable to the network. NBC said they didn't know anything ahead of time, but the damage was already done. People started to wonder who else had turned a blind eye and how many more had suffered in silence. Because of the controversy, NBC has to change the way it does things inside. They made it against the rules to cover up bad behavior, and you might get fired for it. Matt Lauer's fall from grace happened quickly. At one point, he was one of the most trusted faces on American TV. The next second, he was gone. After being let go from NBC's Today Show in late 2017, the man who used to be the king of morning news virtually completely disappeared from public life. By 2018, a lot of his closest pals had stopped talking to him. People who used to call and text him all the time stopped getting in touch. He didn't answer messages. He didn't leave home very often. Some people reported he didn't talk to anyone outside of his immediate family for months. The man who used to stroll red carpets and MC big events just disappeared. He went back to his mansion in the Hamptons. He tried to make himself invisible behind the gates of Stronghart Manor. He bought a huge piece of land on the sea from Richard Gere in 2016 for $36.5 million. It featured 12 bedrooms, 12 baths, more than 14,000 square feet of space, and every luxury you could think of, like a tea house by the water and a heated pool. At one point, he put it up for sale for $44.8 million. In the end, it sold for $40.9 million in 2022. People in the area would sometimes see him doing typical things, like taking his kids to school or getting breakfast, but he always seemed fatigued. He was attempting to fit in. He maintained the other houses nearby, but he didn't say anything. Once lived in front of cameras, his life moved into the shadows. At the same time, he and Annette Rook got a divorce. She was a model and horse rider from the Netherlands. And they had been married for 21 years. They had 3 kids together. She broke up with him nearly right away when the scandal broke. The divorce took over 2 years and was final on September 7, 2019. He is said to have consented to all of her requirements without a fight. She got as much as $20 million in assets, including complete ownership of their horse property. They kept working together to run the property. And the arrangement for the kids' care was said to be peaceful. Even though the public was watching, they kept it quiet. People who knew Lauer said he tried to repair the marriage, but Roque had already given up her decision. In October 2019, things got worse. That's when journalist Ronan Farrow released Catch and Kill, a book that made serious accusations against Lauer. It told the story of an alleged rape of Brooke Neville's, a former NBC producer, during the 2014 Sochi Olympics. Lauer disputed it, saying that the relationship was consensual. But the book had more than one story in it. It made it look like a network had kept Lauer safe for years. It talked of a culture of silence at NBC, where complaints were ignored and influential people didn't care. People were shocked. The news went crazy again. Lauer was no longer just a discredited news anchor. He was suddenly a key player in a bigger conversation about abuse and power in the media. Lauer finally said something in 2020. He published a large open letter after 2 years of silence. He refuted Neville's claims, arguing that the relationship was wrong but not illegal. He said that Ronan Farrow's book was poorly researched and didn't accurately reflect his side of the story. He argued that the media cared more about making things sound exciting than telling the facts. He said he had made mistakes, but he also said that the press and the people had not been fair to him. The letter was long and heartfelt, but it didn't change much. Most people thought it was a feeble attempt to protect his reputation. Farrow stuck to what he had said. The damage was already done. Lauer still lives in the Hamptons as of 2025. He also goes to New Zealand. How much money does he have? Still, it's still high, at over $80 million. He made up to $25 million a year with NBC at the height of his career. He is still financially stable, even after paying a large divorce settlement. He hasn't gone back to TV or started any new projects, and he doesn't need to. He stays out of the spotlight and lives a calm, luxurious life without the attention he used to want. Something unexpected happened in his personal life. He started dating Shaman Abbas, a longtime friend and executive at a luxury brand, in 2019, not long after his divorce. They had been friends for approximately 20 years before they fell in love. Even though the media is very interested, they've kept things quiet. They go places together, go to events now and then, and split their time between New York and the Hamptons. Friends say that Abbas is really helpful. They have been together for more than 5 years now. They stay out of the public eye and seem happy living a life that is very different from Lauer's old one. In 2024, something else changed. Lauer began to get back in touch with former friends. He started reaching out after years of being alone by sending texts and making calls. People who knew him well said he looked more at ease. He was spending more time with his kids and getting used to his new life. There were no signs of a comeback or of regret. A man just trying to get away from the spotlight and move on.